The first time Celeste Ardan ruined my life, she did it beneath a chandelier shaped like a crown. 300 people stood when her name was announced. Donors lifted champagne flutes. Cameras flashed against the gold walls of the Marlowe Hotel, and Celeste walked toward the stage in a white silk dress, one hand pressed modestly to her heart. She looked exactly the way the newspapers always described her: brilliant, gracious, untouchable. I stood behind the curtain holding the speech I had written for her. "Smile, Nadia," she whispered as she passed me. "You helped make this happen." Then she accepted the Bellwether Scholarship, thanked Professor Voss, thanked the foundation, thanked her dead father, thanked the city, and forgot my name. That scholarship became the first brick in the empire she built over my bones. 7 years later, Celeste was the youngest director in Bellwether Foundation history. I was the disgraced analyst accused of falsifying the community impact data that had launched her career. She had my access logs, my private drafts, and 3 witnesses who repeated the same polished lie. Nadia Vale acted alone. The truth was uglier. Celeste had ordered every alteration. I had kept the original files. I had also been stupid enough to tell her. On the night I died, I was supposed to meet a journalist under the East Bridge and hand over the evidence. Rain hammered the road. Headlights bloomed behind me. A black sedan crossed 2 lanes, struck my car, and sent it through the barrier. As the river filled my lungs, my phone lit on the passenger seat. One message. "Celeste, you should have stayed grateful." My final thought was not fear. It was fury. Then I opened my eyes to the sound of someone knocking on a bathroom door. "Nadia," a woman called. "The committee is waiting." I stared at my hands. No blood. No glass. No wedding ring from the husband who had left when the scandal broke. My nails were short and painted gray, the way I wore them in graduate school. A thin silver watch circled my wrist. The second hand ticked with cheerful cruelty. The mirror showed a 24-year-old woman with damp black hair, wide brown eyes, and a face that had not yet learned how expensive trust could be. Behind me, taped to the tiled wall, was a printed schedule. Bellwether Scholarship Nomination Review. October 18th. 2 p.m. I gripped the sink until my fingers hurt. Not a dream. Not heaven. Not mercy. I had returned to the afternoon when Celeste's future still required my signature. "Nadia?" The knock came again. "Professor Voss says we cannot submit without you." I laughed. It came out small, cracked, almost frightened. But underneath it was something I had not felt in years. Power. I opened the door. Mira Chen, the department coordinator, stood in the hallway holding a blue folder against her chest. She was 30 then, all sharp eyeliner and sharper instincts. In my first life, she resigned 2 months after Celeste received the scholarship. I had believed the official story about family obligations. Years later, I learned Mira had questioned the application budget. Celeste threatened to expose her undocumented mother. "Nadia, are you all right?" Mira asked. "I am now." She blinked. "The committee has reviewed everything except your field supervisor recommendation." Professor Voss told them it was already signed. Of course he had. I followed her down the corridor, feeling each step land inside 2 lives at once. The university's old policy building smelled of burnt coffee, radiator dust, and wet wool. Students crowded the stairwell. A printer screamed somewhere behind a closed office. Every detail was painfully ordinary. That was the first pattern interruption of my second life. Revenge did not begin with thunder. It began with fluorescent lights and a blue folder. The committee room door stood open. Professor Malcolm Voss sat at the head of the table, silver-haired and smiling. Beside him, Celeste wore a navy dress, and the expression she used whenever powerful people were watching, grateful enough to seem humble, confident enough to seem inevitable. Her mother, Victoria Ardan, sat near the window in a camel coat that cost more than my annual rent. Celeste saw me and rose. "There she is." She crossed the room and took both my hands. "My secret weapon." The words once made me glow. This time, they made my skin crawl. Professor Voss tapped the document before him. Nadia, the Foundation courier arrives in 20 minutes. Sign the final page, and we can celebrate. Celeste squeezed my fingers. Too hard. A warning disguised as affection. I looked down at the recommendation. The first paragraph praised Celeste's leadership during the South Ward renewal study. The second described her original statistical framework. The third credited her with gaining the trust of 200 displaced families. Every sentence was a theft. I had designed the framework. I had conducted the interviews. I had spent 6 months in leaking church basements listening to mothers describe eviction notices while Celeste appeared twice for photographs. But Professor Voss had called me practical. Celeste was charismatic. She could carry the work farther than I ever would. Signing her recommendation, he said, meant choosing impact over ego. In my first life, I signed. In my second, I uncapped the pen, drew one clean line through my name, and wrote beneath it, "Recommendation withdrawn pending ethics review." The room became so quiet I heard rain tapping the windows. Celeste's smile remained in place for 3 full seconds. Then it broke. "What did you do?" she asked. I closed the folder. I stopped signing away my future. Professor Voss recovered first. He gave the committee members a patient smile, the kind adults use when a child overturns a glass at dinner. "Nadia has clearly misunderstood the purpose of today's meeting. Let us take 5 minutes."
"No," I said.
"Let us take 20. Victoria Ardan's gaze moved over me with surgical calm. "Young woman, do you understand what you are jeopardizing?"
"Yes."
"That is why I am doing it." Celeste stepped closer. Her perfume reached me before her voice did. White flowers and cedar, the same scent that had lingered in the elevator outside the courtroom where I lost my first appeal. "Nadia, can we speak privately?" In my previous life, that always worked out wonderfully. The sentence escaped before I could stop it. Myra's eyebrows lifted. Professor Voss frowned. Celeste searched my face, but I turned toward the committee before she could ask what I meant. My recommendation states that Celeste developed the South Ward statistical framework and led the resident interviews. Both claims are false. I developed the framework. I conducted 187 of the 200 interviews. I also have concerns about the expense reports attached to the project. Professor Voss's chair scraped back. "That is enough." "It is not." "Nadia," he said quietly, "you are tired. You have been under tremendous strain since your mother's death. I am willing to overlook this outburst if you correct the document now." There it was. The gentle knife. My mother had died 11 months earlier, leaving behind medical debt, a storage unit full of books, and a daughter desperate to prove she could still be useful. Voss had wrapped exploitation in paternal concern from the beginning. He gave me extra work, withheld credit, and told me gratitude was the same thing as loyalty. In my first life, I believed him. Now I reached into the blue folder and removed 3 pages. "Appendix C," I said. "The transportation reimbursements list Celeste as attending field visits on March 4th, March 11th, and March 18th. I have the attendance logs. She was in Boston on the 4th, at a donor retreat on the 11th, and photographed at a charity luncheon on the 18th. Victoria's face did not move, but her right thumb pressed into her wedding ring. I remembered that habit. She did it whenever a conversation became dangerous. Celeste laughed softly. Those reimbursements were submitted by the department office. I never handled them. Myra's chin lifted. The forms carry your digital approval. A shared assistant processed them. Which assistant? I asked. Celeste's eyes flashed. Professor Voss placed both palms on the table. This committee is not an investigative tribunal. Dr. Amara Bell, the oldest member present, finally spoke. She had spent 20 years designing public housing policy and possessed no patience for ornamental men. "No," she said, looking at the altered recommendation. "But the bellwether rules require us to report material inaccuracies before submission." Voss turned toward her. "Amara, surely you read the rules before chairing the committee." The balance in the room shifted by 1 inch. Sometimes that is all justice needs. Dr. Bell asked me to present my evidence. I gave her the copied attendance sheets I had carried in my satchel without remembering why. In my first life, I had collected them to correct the department archive. They had seemed trivial. Nothing is trivial when someone builds a lie from paperwork. Celeste sat down. Her posture remained perfect, but color climbed her throat. The courier arrived 12 minutes later. He left without the application. By sunset, the nomination was frozen for 72 hours. By nightfall, half the graduate department had heard that Nadia Vale had publicly accused Celeste Ardan of fraud. And by midnight, someone had broken into my apartment. I knew before I opened the door. The lock showed no damage, but the brass plate sat a fraction too high. In my first life, I would not have noticed. 7 years of being watched had trained me to recognize the footprints of fear. I stepped back into the hallway and called campus security. A lamp was overturned inside. My desk drawers hung open. The mattress had been lifted. Whoever entered had ignored my laptop, cash jar, and grandmother's earrings. They wanted documents. More specifically, they wanted the documents they believed I had taken from the committee room. Security Officer Hale asked whether I had enemies. Only one with a donor list. He did not smile. While he photographed the apartment, I stood beneath the hallway light and considered my mistake. I had returned with memories, not resources. The original files that saved me in my first life did not yet exist. The allies I once found were still strangers. Celeste had money, influence, and a mother who treated human beings like negotiable assets. I had 72 hours. Fury was not a plan, so I built one. At 1:17 a.m., I called Mira. She answered on the fourth ring. Please tell me you are not withdrawing the accusation. My apartment was searched. Silence. Then, are you safe? For tonight. What do you need? The raw South Ward files, including edit histories, approval logs, and budget exports. Voss restricted the project drive this evening. Can you still access the backup server? Another silence, longer this time. Mira lowered her voice. How do you know there is a backup server? Because 6 years from now, after Celeste destroyed me, I would find Mira in a bakery in Queens and learn everything she had been too frightened to say. I pay attention, I answered. That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give you. I expected refusal. Instead, Mira said, meet me at the 24-hour laundromat on Gable Street in 40 minutes. Bring quarters. The laundromat was empty except for a sleeping man near the vending machine and 12 washing machines turning like silver eyes. Mira sat on a plastic chair with a laundry basket at her feet. You came prepared, I said. My building has cameras. People carrying laundry at 2 in the morning look pathetic, not suspicious. She pulled a flash drive from a sock. I almost laughed. Then I remembered the woman she would become in my first life. Cautious, exhausted, living under another surname because Celeste had taught her that truth could endanger everyone she loved. I am sorry, I said. For what? For not seeing what they did to you. Her expression tightened. They have not done anything. Not yet. Mira studied me beneath the humming lights. You are different today. I had a bad night. It is 2 in the morning. Everyone is having a bad night. She handed me the drive but did not release it. There are duplicate invoices in the project budget. Some are small. Some are not. Voss told me the foundation approved discretionary outreach costs, but there is no approval. If I help you, and this fails, I lose my visa sponsorship. My mother loses her housing application. Do you understand?
Ido. No, Nadia.
Do you? I covered her hand with mine. I will not use your name without permission. I will duplicate the evidence, timestamp it, and send sealed copies to 3 independent offices. If they retaliate against you, retaliation becomes evidence. Her grip loosened. You sound like a lawyer, she murmured. I sound like someone who already lost. That was when the laundromat door opened. Celeste walked in alone.
No coat, no umbrella.
Rain jeweled her dark hair, and for once there was no audience to perform for. She looked at the flash drive between our hands. Then she locked the door behind her. Mira stood so quickly the laundry basket tipped over. Celeste glanced at the rolling socks, then at me. You always choose dramatic locations, Nadia. I do not remember inviting you. You did not. Professor Voss noticed a late login from the backup server. Myra's credentials were used. She smiled at Mira without warmth. You should change your password more often. Mira went pale. I slid the flash drive into my sleeve. Celeste saw the movement and sighed. This does not need to become ugly. It became ugly when someone searched my apartment. Her eyes sharpened. You think that was me? I think you are here at 2 in the morning because you are terrified of what I might find. For 1 second, the golden girl vanished. I saw the real Celeste beneath the polished voice and careful posture. Not fearless, not brilliant, simply accustomed to other people stepping aside before she had to push. Then the mask returned. She placed a cream envelope on top of a washing machine. $30,000, she said. Enough to clear your mother's hospital debt and finish your degree without working nights. Reinstate the recommendation, explain that grief affected your judgment, and this ends. Mira stared at the envelope. My old self would have stared too. $30,000 had once represented sleep, security, and the possibility of opening my mail without shaking. Now it looked like the cheapest thing in the room. Why does my recommendation matter so much? I asked. Celeste tilted her head. You know why. I want to hear you say it. The field supervisor's evaluation carries 40% of the final score. Mira looked between us. Professor Voss said faculty endorsements determined the nomination. Publicly, I said. The foundation changed its scoring after the Langford scandal. They trust the person closest to the actual work, not the most famous name on the letterhead. Celeste's mouth tightened. That detail had not become public until years later, during a lawsuit. In my first life, I learned that my recommendation, not Voss's influence, not Victoria's donations, had placed Celeste above the other finalists. My signature had opened every door she later slammed in my face. Celeste stepped toward me. You were happy to help yesterday. Yesterday, I was confused. And today? Today I remembered what helping you costs. She searched my expression again. I wondered whether some instinct warned her that I was no longer the woman she knew.
Fine, she said.
Keep the money out of pride. But Mira should understand the consequences. Her visa letter requires Voss's annual certification. Myra's breathing changed. I took out my phone and held it up. Celeste laughed. Recording me without consent is inadmissible in this state. Not for a criminal case, perhaps. But donors adore audio. The laughter stopped. That was a bluff. I had begun recording only after Celeste mentioned Myra's visa, and our state required all-party consent in most private settings. Yet reputation did not obey courtroom rules. Celeste moved closer until only a washing machine separated us. You think one accusation makes you powerful? She whispered. People like you are useful because you confuse access with belonging. Voss lets you into the room, I let you stand beside me, and suddenly you believe the room is yours. The words should have hurt. They had hurt once. This time I smiled. People like me built the room. A dryer buzzer shrieked behind her. Celeste flinched. It was a tiny movement, almost nothing, but Mira saw it. I saw Mira see it. Fear, once exposed, loses half its eyes. Celeste picked up the envelope and walked toward the door. Before unlocking it, she turned back. The ethics review begins at 9. By 10, Voss will produce emails showing you approved every expense. By noon, the committee will conclude that you withdrew the recommendation because Celeste Ardan rejected your request for co-authorship. That is oddly specific, because it is already true. She left. Mira waited until the rain swallowed Celeste's footsteps. Did she just tell us they forged evidence? Yes. And your recording cannot be used? Not the way she thinks. I stopped the audio and sent copies to 2 encrypted accounts. Then I opened the flash drive on Myra's laptop. Celeste had not been bluffing. The project folder contained 6 emails from my university address approving revised expenses. Each was time-stamped during field visits when I had no internet access. The wording mimicked mine, but not perfectly. I never wrote, "Kindly confirm." Professor Voss did. "They prepared this before today," Mira said. "Long before." A chill moved through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. In my first life, I assumed Celeste framed me only after the audit began. The forged approvals proved something worse. I had been selected as the eventual scapegoat before I ever signed her recommendation. My loyalty had not delayed betrayal. It had merely made betrayal easier. Mira opened the server metadata. The messages were imported from an administrator account, but the account name is hidden. Maybe from the nightly snapshot. She navigated through folders while washing machines churned around us. At 3:06 a.m., she found a compressed archive. At 3:19, we cracked the access table. The administrator account belonged to Malcolm Voss. But there was another surprise. Attached to the forged emails was a draft misconduct report dated 6 weeks earlier. It accused me of manipulating travel reimbursements, pressuring residents to falsify interviews, and displaying increasing emotional instability after a family bereavement. The report included a witness statement from Celeste. At the bottom, beneath lines of polished concern, she had written, "I delayed reporting Nadia because I considered her a friend." Mira swore under her breath. I read the statement twice. In my first life, those words had convinced half the world that Celeste was compassionate. Seeing them before the crime was complete felt like hearing my own eulogy rehearsed. "We send everything now," Mira said. "Not yet." She stared at me. "Why?" "Because Voss controls the department investigation. Victoria controls 2 foundation trustees. If we release this without proving who created it and why, they will call the draft a contingency document based on legitimate concerns. It names things that never happened. Truth is not enough when liars own the microphone." I copied the archive and checked the file properties. The report had been created on a computer assigned to the Bellwether Foundation's private donor suite. Not Voss's office. Not Celeste's laptop.
Victoria Ardan suite.
I closed the computer. At 9, I said, "They expect me to defend myself." Mira folded her arms. "What are you going to do?" "I am going to recommend someone else." At 8:55, the ethics panel assembled in the same room where I had crossed out my name. The difference was that everyone had brought lawyers. Victoria Ardan sat beside Celeste with a gray-haired attorney named Samuel Pike. Professor Voss had university counsel on his right and a stack of printed emails on his left. Dr. Bell occupied the far end of the table. Mira was absent by design, though a sealed copy of the server archive waited in a bank deposit box under instructions she had written herself. I entered alone. Voss looked almost disappointed. "Nadia, you may still resolve this informally." "Wonderful. Withdraw Celeste's nomination, correct the project credits, preserve the servers, and report the forged approvals." Pike leaned back. "Those are serious allegations from someone facing serious allegations of her own. Then we should all enjoy the evidence." University counsel asked me to sit. A recorder clicked on. Voss began with concern. He described my grief, financial stress, and growing resentment toward Celeste. He presented the forged emails. Celeste spoke next, her voice trembling at exactly the right moments. She said I had demanded co-authorship despite performing only administrative tasks. When she refused, I threatened to destroy her career. It was a beautiful performance. That was another lesson from my first life. The best lies do not erase the truth. They rearrange it. I had demanded co-authorship because I wrote half the study. Celeste had refused. I had said the data would not survive scrutiny without correction. Every real moment had been twisted 1 degree until it pointed at me. Pike slid my withdrawn recommendation toward the panel. "Ms. Vale's abrupt reversal is retaliation." "No," I said. "It is quality control." I placed a new recommendation beside it. Dr. Bell read the name aloud. Hannah Brooks. Celeste's head snapped toward me. Hannah was a social work graduate student who had coordinated the South Ward tenant clinics. She was quiet, relentless, and almost invisible to donors. In my first life, she left the university after Celeste claimed Hannah had mishandled confidential resident records. Years later, those residents formed the coalition that exposed Bellwether's housing fraud. The scholarship allowed replacement nominees during a compliance hold. No one except the field supervisor could submit one. Voss's face reddened. "You have no authority to nominate Ms. Brooks." I opened the program handbook to page 42. "As appointed field supervisor, I do. You are appointed for scheduling purposes." The appointment letter does not say that. He knew because he had signed it. I had insisted on formal documentation when the project began, hoping the title would strengthen future job applications. Voss gave it to me because he believed titles were harmless when attached to powerless people. He had forgotten that paperwork remembers what powerful people prefer to forget. Dr. Bell examined Hannah's recommendation. This includes verified hours, resident evaluations, and authorship records. Because Hannah earned them. Celeste leaned toward her attorney, whispering too loudly, "She cannot do this." I looked directly at her. "Apparently I can." Pike requested a recess. "Before we break," I said, "I would like the panel to preserve Professor Voss's administrator account and the Bellwether donor suite computer assigned to Victoria Ardan." Victoria's thumb pressed into her ring. Pike's eyes narrowed. "On what basis?" "The basis is currently being delivered." Right on cue, someone knocked. Officer Hale entered carrying a clear evidence bag. Inside was the cream envelope Celeste had offered me at the laundromat. Celeste went still. After she left, Mira had noticed the envelope on the floor near the door. Celeste must have dropped it while reaching for the lock. We did not open it. We called campus security from a public phone, reported abandoned property connected to an active harassment complaint, and let Officer Hale collect it beneath the laundromat cameras. Hale placed the bag before University Council. $30,000 in cashier's checks payable to Nadia Vale. Purchased yesterday at 4:12 p.m. Yesterday. Before I withdrew the recommendation, the room changed. Celeste's prepared story depended on my rebellion beginning after she rejected my imaginary demand. The checks proved she had anticipated a reason to pay me before that confrontation supposedly occurred. Pike recovered quickly. The funds were charitable assistance. Ms. Ardan knew about Ms. Vale's debt. Then why bring them secretly at 2 a.m? Dr. Bell asked. Celeste looked at her mother. Victoria did not look back. That hurt her more than any accusation could have. I saw it in the brief collapse around her eyes. Celeste had spent her life believing she was the center of every room because Victoria arranged the furniture that way. Now, for the first time, her mother was calculating whether she had become disposable. Voss cleared his throat. This has gone far beyond a scholarship dispute. Yes, I said. It began long before one. University Council ordered an immediate forensic hold on the project servers and donor suite computer. The nomination freeze became indefinite. Voss was instructed to surrender his credentials. Celeste was asked to remain available for further interviews. It should have felt like victory. Then Pike smiled. Nadia, he said, before the panel endorses your alternative nominee, perhaps you should disclose your financial relationship with Hannah Brooks. I had no financial relationship with Hannah. At least, not in this life. Pike placed a bank statement on the table. It showed 3 transfers from an account bearing my name to Hannah's account, totaling $12,000. The dates were from the previous month. The signature was mine. For the first time since waking in that bathroom, I had no memory that could explain what I was seeing. I forced myself not to touch the statement. Fear makes people reach for the thing that frightens them. Lawyers notice. May I see the account number? I asked. Pike covered the final 4 digits with one finger. You may answer the question. I cannot answer evidence you're concealing. University Council took the statement from him and passed it to me. The bank logo was familiar. My mother had used the same institution for the Vale Street Literacy Fund, a tiny nonprofit she operated from our kitchen table. After her death, I closed every account with a banker named Eliza Grant. I remembered signing the termination forms because my hand shook so badly Eliza brought me tea. The account number on Pike's statement was not one I recognized. But the signature was perfect. Too perfect. It matched the signature on my passport, including the elongated final stroke I had stopped using after my mother died. Very few people had a copy of that passport. Bellwether did. I had submitted it to process field travel reimbursements. Where did you obtain this? I asked. Pike smiled. Discovery works both ways. There is no discovery. This is an internal review. His smile thinned. I looked at the transaction descriptions. Each transfer was labeled consulting. Beneath the third entry, a code appeared in faint gray print, ACV 7714. I had seen that code before. Not in this life. 7 years later, while tracing the shell organizations Celeste used to inflate community grants, I found recurring transfers marked ACV. Ardan Civic Ventures. Victoria's private consulting company. My pulse steadied. The trap was not new. It was reused. I request a 15-minute recess to contact the bank, I said. Pike objected. Dr. Bell granted it. In the hallway, I called Eliza Grant and told her someone had opened an account in my name. She remembered me, remembered my mother, and understood from my voice that this was not a routine mistake. She could not disclose account details over the phone, but she could confirm one fact after verifying my identity. The account on Pike's statement had been opened online 6 weeks ago. The opening deposit came from Ardan Civic Ventures. I returned to the room in 9 minutes. Pike was speaking quietly to Victoria. Celeste sat apart from them, staring at the abandoned scholarship folder as though she could force time backward. I took my seat. The account is fraudulent. Convenient, Pike said. The opening deposit came from your client's company. Victoria's composure cracked, not dramatically, not with a gasp, but with a single blink that came too late. Pike requested another recess. Dr. Bell refused. University counsel asked for consent to contact the bank. I gave it.
Victoria did not.
That was enough to suspend the hearing and refer the matter to the university's general counsel, but I was done letting closed rooms soften crimes into misunderstandings. I stood. There is one more person you should hear from. Voss looked toward the door. Who? Hannah Brooks. She entered wearing a red raincoat and carrying a cardboard archive box. Celeste's face emptied. I had called Hannah at dawn. She did not trust me at first. Why would she? I had spent months allowing Celeste to receive credit for work Hannah and I had done. So I told her the ugliest truth available. I was a coward yesterday, I said. I am trying not to be one today. Hannah listened. Then she brought the resident records Celeste claimed to have led. The box contained sign-in sheets, interview consent forms, handwritten notes, and 32 disposable camera photographs residents had taken during field visits. In image after image, Hannah sat at folding tables helping families complete housing appeals. I appeared in 12. Celeste appeared in 1. That photograph had been staged. Even better, the date printed on its border did not match the date claimed in Celeste's application. A clock behind her showed 10:14. Building access records showed she entered at 10:03 and left at 10:26. 23 minutes. Her recommendation claimed 240 service hours. Hannah placed a second item on the table, a small digital recorder. Residents began recording meetings after landlords misquoted them, she explained. Celeste attended one planning session. She asked Nadia to summarize the project in language she could use at the donor luncheon. Hannah pressed play. My younger voice filled the room, nervous and eager. I explained the statistical model, the displacement index, and the proposed legal clinic. Then Celeste said, clearly and casually, "Send me the slides without your name." Voss says too many authors confuse donors. The recording continued. I heard myself agree. That was the most humiliating evidence of all. Not because I had done something wrong, but because I heard how grateful I sounded while surrendering what was mine. Celeste stared at the recorder. You recorded me without permission. Hannah met her gaze. It was a public tenant meeting with posted recording notices. For once, Celeste had no answer. The panel adjourned at 11:43 a.m. Professor Voss was placed on administrative leave by noon. Samuel Pike stopped representing Victoria before dinner. And at 6:08 that evening, the Bellwether Foundation announced that Celeste Ardan's nomination had been formally revoked. She came to my apartment 20 minutes later. This time she knocked. Officer Hale had installed a temporary camera above my door, so I saw Celeste standing in the hallway before I opened it. She had changed out of the navy dress. She wore jeans, a black sweater, and no makeup. Without the armor of presentation, she looked younger than 25 and far more dangerous. "I have nothing to say to you," I said through the chain. "You have plenty to say. You always did. You just preferred saying it in documents I could use." I nearly closed the door. Then she added, "My mother opened the account." I stopped. Celeste looked toward the camera. "May I come in?"
No.
A laugh escaped her, brittle and exhausted. "You finally learned." I learned before today. Something in my tone unsettled her. She lowered her voice. Victoria planned to use the transfers if the scholarship application was audited. Voss said every major project needed a containment file. I did not know they created one for you until this morning. You signed the witness statement. He told me it was insurance. Against what? Against you becoming difficult. The honesty was so obscene that I felt nothing for a moment. Celeste gripped the strap of her handbag. "I can testify against them. Voss, my mother, the foundation officers. I know where the original ledgers are. I know which trustees approved the shell grants. And what do you want? Reinstate the recommendation."
Isterte her.
Even stripped of everything, she believed confession was currency. "You think this is negotiation? The scholarship is not just money," she said. "It is bellwether. Every fellowship, every board, every policy office watches who wins. Without it, they will assume I was rejected for cause." "You were." Her face hardened. "Hannah cannot use it the way I can." There it was again, impact over ego, theft dressed as efficiency. "You still believe being visible makes you valuable," I said. "I know how the world works." "So, do I."
No, Nadia.
"You know how work works. I know how power works." In my first life, that sentence would have silenced me because part of me agreed. Celeste could enter a room and leave with 3 promises, 2 introductions, and someone else's idea in her purse. I could spend months proving a conclusion and still apologize before presenting it. But power was not magic. It was permission repeated until everyone forgot permission could be withdrawn. I opened the door only wide enough to remove the chain. Celeste's eyes brightened, mistaking access for surrender. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind me. "My recommendation was worth 40%, I said. Voss's letter was worth 15. Your academic record was worth 20. The rest came from interviews and service verification. I know the scoring."
No.
"You know the categories. You never saw the internal review notes." Her expression changed. In my first life, a leaked court exhibit revealed the committee's comments. Celeste's interview had scored poorly. Reviewers found her answers polished but vague. Her service hours were inconsistent. 2 trustees wanted to remove her from the shortlist. My recommendation changed their decision. I had described moments that never happened, attributing my choices to her. I wrote that Celeste stayed overnight to help a family facing emergency eviction. I wrote that she redesigned the survey after residents objected to invasive questions. I wrote that she accepted blame publicly when a volunteer exposed private information. I had done those things. Then I gave them to her in ink. "The committee did not choose you," I said. "They chose the woman I described." Celeste's lips parted. I watched the truth arrive, not as guilt, but as injury. She had believed my labor supplemented her greatness. She had never considered that my character was the greatness. "You made me," she whispered.
No.
"I wrote a fictional person, and you wore her name." Her eyes filled, but the tears did not fall. "Then write it again." I almost admired the audacity. Instead, I said, "Hannah's recommendation has already been submitted." Celeste stepped forward. Withdraw it.
No.
You owe me a chance to fix this.
I owed myself that chance.
You spent it. The elevator doors opened behind her. Victoria Ardan emerged with 2 Foundation security officers and stopped when she saw us. For one suspended second, mother and daughter looked at each other, without performance. Victoria spoke first. Celeste, do not say another word. Celeste turned slowly. You opened an account in Nadia's name.
Come downstairs.
You prepared a misconduct report before the application was submitted. Victoria's gaze flicked toward the camera. Celeste noticed. Something inside her finally broke, not because her mother had committed fraud, but because Victoria's first concern was whether the betrayal had been recorded. You were going to blame me too, Celeste said. Victoria did not answer. She did not need to. Celeste began to laugh. It echoed down the hallway, sharp and almost childlike. Then she pulled a key from her bag and tossed it at her mother's feet. The ledgers are in the lake house, she said, behind the wine cellar wall. Victoria went white. The camera above my door blinked red. Pattern interruption. Sometimes the person you defeat hands you the final weapon because she has just discovered she was never the favorite, only the next shield. The investigation lasted 11 months. Victoria Ardan was charged with identity theft, wire fraud, obstruction, and conspiracy. Professor Voss resigned before the university could fire him, then discovered resignation did not prevent prosecutors from subpoenaing his private accounts. The Lake House ledgers connected Ardan Civic Ventures to 6 inflated housing grants and 3 scholarship funds used as personal pipelines for donors' children. Celeste testified. People called her brave. She had not become honest. She had become cornered. Still, truthful evidence does not become useless because the witness arrives late. Her testimony helped return millions to community programs, and I learned to accept justice without demanding that every participant deserve applause. Hannah Brooks received the Bellwether Scholarship in December. At the ceremony, she wore the same red raincoat over a borrowed dress because she refused to buy something new for donors. When her name was announced, she did not walk toward the stage alone. She invited 3 South Ward residents to join her. Hannah thanked the residents, the legal clinic volunteers, Dr. Bell, and Mira. Then she looked directly at me. My recommendation described work accurately, she said. That should not be remarkable. In institutions built on borrowed credit, however, accuracy can be an act of courage. I did not cry until Mira handed me a napkin and whispered, "Your mascara is committing an ethics violation." That interruption saved me from becoming sentimental on camera. Afterward, Dr. Bell offered me a permanent research position with full authorship protections and a salary that made me reread the page twice. I accepted on one condition: field staff and community partners would review every publication before submission. She agreed. Mira became the Foundation's first independent compliance director. Her visa sponsorship transferred beyond Voss's reach. Her mother moved into approved housing the following spring. As for Celeste, she avoided prison through cooperation but lost the future she had treated as inheritance. Bellwether barred her permanently. Policy firms withdrew their offers. The magazines that once photographed her began printing unflattering courthouse pictures beneath headlines about fallen privilege. I expected satisfaction. What I felt was quieter. Relief, perhaps. A year after the scholarship ceremony, Celeste requested a meeting. I nearly refused, but curiosity has always been one of my less disciplined qualities. We met at the Gable Street laundromat in daylight. She arrived early and sat beside the same row of silver machines. Her hair was shorter. Her clothes were plain. No envelope waited between us. "I work at a neighborhood legal office now," she said. "Doing what?" "Intake. Scheduling. Copying files. Things I used to call administrative." I waited. She rubbed her palms together. "Nobody knows who I was. That must be difficult." "It is peaceful." She looked toward the turning machines. "I used to think you withdrew the recommendation to destroy me. I withdrew it because it was false. I understand that now. Understanding consequences is not the same as understanding harm." "I know." No, I said softly. You are beginning to know. Then she asked the question that had brought her there. Did you ever consider signing it again? Yes, I said. Celeste looked surprised. For 1 minute in the hallway, when you offered to testify. Part of me wanted the ledgers badly enough to trade Hannah's future for them. Why did you not? Because that was how you became you. The dryer beside us stopped. In the sudden quiet, Celeste nodded. We did not forgive each other. Forgiveness was not the prize, and I no longer performed emotions to make other people comfortable. She left first. I stayed long enough to watch a woman fold bright children's shirts into careful squares. My second life did not become perfect. I still woke during storms with river water in my throat. I still checked locks twice. I still felt anger when newspapers described Voss as a respected scholar who had made tragic mistakes. Rebirth returned my years, not my innocence. But it gave me something better. The moment before consent. The pause before I signed, agreed, apologized, surrendered, or made myself smaller. In that pause, I could ask who benefited from my silence. I could remember that kindness without boundaries becomes free labor for cruel people. I could choose differently. 3 years later, Hannah's tenant protection model became state law. The published report listed 27 contributors, including residents whose names institutions once considered inconvenient. My name appeared where it belonged, not first because I demanded worship, and not last because I feared visibility, but beside the work I had actually done. At the signing ceremony, reporters asked how the project began.
Hannah smiled at me.
I answered truthfully. It began with a withdrawn recommendation. That night, I visited my mother's grave and placed a copy of the law beneath the small stone angel. I told her I had finally paid the hospital debt. I told her I had stopped confusing gratitude with obedience. Wind moved through the cemetery trees, carrying the smell of rain. My phone vibrated. A message from Mira showed a photograph of the old blue scholarship folder, now displayed in Bellwether's compliance training room. Beneath the crossed-out signature was a brass plaque. No future is worth a false name. I laughed so loudly a groundskeeper stared. In my first life, Celeste Ardan stood beneath a crown-shaped chandelier and thanked everyone except the woman who had signed her future. In my second, she learned the truth before the ink dried. The signature had never been proof that she deserved the door. It was proof that I had opened it. And once I understood that, I never handed anyone the key again.